So next up is working on engineering a tall designer cabinet so you can learn more ways to use the tools in Toolbox and build that cabinet your customer is looking for. Now, if you haven't seen any of the other videos on the face frame library, you can check them out under the complete training plan. All right, well now let's get to work on this tall cabinet in Microvellum Toolbox. The face frame library and the foundation library in general have some very versatile cabinets. These two cabinets are called the vertical and horizontal designer cabinets. You can find them by going into Draw Products and then the Master Cabinet category. In this video, I'll be working on the vertical designer product and going over how to turn a basic 3-bay cabinet into something like this. I'll be showing you how to add multiple bays and different component inserts like a set of dividers and a couple rollouts behind these doors. The first step is to open up the product prompts and start making some general changes to the product. This is where to update the overall size of the product and where you can set how many different bays you want. I'm going to set it to 4. Then by changing the left and right end conditions, I can add a face frame to each side. These prompts are grayed out because Toolbox has a calculator that you can use to set the different bay heights, and depending on how the rails overlay your shelves, it also calculates the face frame opening. Right-click in the open space to access the calculator. Now enter the heights you know, then for the ones you don't, check the equal box, and it'll figure out the rest. Also, I want the finished ends turned on, so the cabinet sides use the finished material. Under Face Options, you can set the different door overlays or reveals. These are settings that can be updated for the entire project or just the product. I'm going to want just a standard detail for the face frame options. Currently, it's set to add a separate bead to the frame because the project settings are using that style for all the products. And now into each bay to give it the correct face option and component insert. By using the vertical and horizontal splitter face options, I can create more bays inside of these here. And that's when you start getting into nested subassemblies. Notice when a bay uses a splitter option like bays 2 and 3, face frame rails and stiles are added to separate the openings. Okay, now it's time to start working on more of the details. The first one is the way I want the frame to overlay the cabinet carcass. I'm going to want the shelves to be flush with the inside edge of the frame. So to do that, I'll go back to the prompts and change the cabinet overlays. The top will be set to the outside edge of the rail, and the bottom to the inside. Then set the overlay amount for both to 0. That's good. The top is where I want it. And that's what it looks like with the bottom being set to the inside and no overlay amount. All right, now let's work on making the stiles run to the floor. You can do this by changing the prompts of the face frame subassembly, but a faster way is to do it through the project settings. I'm going to open up the global variables for the project. And here under the expansion settings are the different face frame options. So these two settings are going to control how the product behaves when it's set to have a face frame end condition. I also want to have scribe on the style for installation, so make sure that box is checked, and also updating the finished end scribe amount. For that one, I'll need to go to the Library Construction tab and set a new scribe amount for all finished ends. You can just hit enter after typing in a new value here. It'll keep those changes. The toe kick settings can also be updated, so I'll change the front offset to 4, and also the offset from the finished sides. Notice that there are 2 different variables for the side offset when using adjustable legs. This one is just when the product has finished ends. After redrawing the product, you can see the changes that were just made. Something else I want to point out is how the sides are running past the bottom and aligning with the bottom rail of the frame. If you don't want this, you can change it here in the local prompts or for the entire project. Now if I want, this can be set for all base, tall, and uppers. But I'm going to just do it to the tall since the others don't apply for this project. All right, now back into the drawing. And then into the product prompts again to see that the changes made in the global variables affected this product. And as it's done redrawing, the cabinet is now updated to be built just like a standard cabinet box, without the sides extending past the top or bottom. The way I like doing this is getting everything looking the way I want by first making the edits at the project and local level, then begin working on the different subassemblies. I also like to start at the top since that's bay 1, and then go from there. I have this button to show subassembly prompts in my tool strip, but if you don't, then go to Modify, then Modify Subassemblies. Select the subassembly to modify, and because this subassembly has a nested subassembly, this question appears. Select No to see the parent, or Yes to skip the parent and go deeper into the nested subassembly. I want these two doors to be inset, so that's at the subassembly level. And then it's just rinse and repeat. Go into the different subassemblies, or in some cases, nested subassemblies, and continue building this product. This horizontal opening splitter doesn't have any nested subassemblies yet. And before changing any of the face options in the bays, be sure to right-click and open up the calculators to set the different sizes for each opening. In Bay 2, I'll add a wine rack, and because this is inside the horizontal splitter subassembly, the wine rack becomes a nested subassembly. Now, if I'm really engineering this product for production, I'm going to make sure I check all the little details. For example, I don't want this part of the frame to be blocking any of the wine rack, so I can change how the style overlays the division inside the parent subassembly. I'm also going to make these doors inset. Depending on how many different bays you have in this horizontal opening splitter, you'll have the option to set the style overlay on each one of the divisions. First division style will be on the right side, and then the next one, moving from left to right, will be set to the left to make it the inside edge of that second bay. And to change the handle location, since I don't like them there, I can change the door type for bays 1 and 3 to upper doors. Now this looks to the settings for upper doors to locate those handles. Now if you want the opening size or anything else to be different about this wine rack, that's when you'd select Yes and go into the nested subassembly. And in here you have the prompts that are only controlling this wine rack. So I'm going to update the opening size and give it a 1-inch setback. And I'm saving this to just the row of the workbook, so it doesn't affect anything else in the project or the library. This next section, just more rinse and repeat. Setting the opening for each bay, then divisions in Bay 1 and a drawer for Bay 2. The divisions are nested inside the vertical opening splitter, so I'll open up those prompts to change the quantity. There's also a calculator for those openings. Now behind these doors, I have some rollouts, but they're not going to work very well with this intermediate style and the hinges on the doors. So first, inside the component door subassembly to turn off the style, and then the drawers, which are called an inner drawer subassembly, to change the drawer quantity. You can switch to a different drawer type if you want. And also in here, the option to turn on drawer spacers to clear the hinges of those doors. This product is so dynamic that when one thing changes, everything else updates the way that it should. Like the drawer size shrinking because I just told it needed to have spacers. And finally, the last thing to do before calling this cabinet complete is turning the finished face frame into just a frame with a mid-rail and no inset panel. Subassembly prompts again, this time in the left applied end. I'm going to uncheck the inset panel prompt to only have the frame. And by unchecking the simple calculation prompt, you can change the vertical panel quantity. With every additional panel, a mid-rail will be added. If you want, change the value in the Z location to raise or lower that rail. And lastly, copy those same settings for the right applied end. Now this cabinet, if approved by the customer, is ready to send to production. Thanks for following along. Okay, well that'll wrap up this video. Thanks again for joining me, and be sure to stick around for the next couple videos to complete this face frame training plan. I'll see you next time.